In the aftermath of the 21 young lives lost at the Enyobeni tavern in the Eastern Cape in June, the debate around underage drinking since then has taken on robust form. Let's talk to new Lovelife Trust CEO, Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo, about whether how we are framing it is on the money or off the mark, and whether tampering with existing legislation will have the effect of limiting the danger to minors. Linda, good evening, and thank you very much for joining the program. The Liquor Act has been in force for several years now, and we know it limits drinking to above 18 only. It would seem that the issue is not in the law, but in enforcement. What's your view on that?
You and I are totally on the same WhatsApp group when it comes to that. We've got a law that we are failing to implement and ensure that there's compliance to. So if we're failing to implement the law with the age limit of 18, what makes us think that if we increase the age limit, we're going to have success there? That's the question we're asking ourselves.
You've critiqued government and the president for calls for a national debate on adjusting the regulations. Are these calls that we're hearing from government and others, in your view, based on research or emotion and populism?
I think we are reacting, and they're really more based on emotion. I think the debates we should be having really are around what is our relationship with alcohol as South African adults, long before we even get to the young people? Do we use alcohol or do we abuse it? And how did we get to a point where young people can access taverns, drink alcohol without any adult raising alarm around the issue? Those are really the debates that we should be having, rather than talking about raising the age limits.
In reading your contribution to the debate, Linda, you talk about, different behaviors that are fueling how, and you touched on it a little bit there, on how, children or young people are accessing alcohol. And you have a message for parents and adults even who ask children to fetch them a drink. I think a lot of us who are listening to this program and our interview right now could recall someone in our community, someone at home, a relative, making this behavior completely commonplace. Why do you think it is a problem?
Well, you see, the thing is that when we send children to buy alcohol, first of all, we are making them part of the problem of lack of compliance to the law. And secondly, unconsciously in our behavior, we are making it okay for them at a very young age to be engaging with alcohol, whether it is buying it or whether actually consuming it. And so we need to really introspect on our behavior before we start pointing at children using alcohol before the age of 18 and then doing it irresponsibly.
How endemic is underage drinking in South Africa, Linda? What statistics do we have that really reveal this issue that we're facing?
It's quite problematic in South Africa. And the interesting thing, Iman, is that a lot of the underage drinking actually starts at home. So whenever I've been in discussions with underage children, without even looking at the research, but just the anecdotal feedback that they give, the first place where the majority of them have tasted alcohol is at home, whether they're taking a sip of open alcohol in the fridge, or there is umsebenzi at home and they're watching adults drinking and behaving, in what seems to be a jolly and unrestricted way. Then they want to taste alcohol because they want to feel what it is that's making the adults around them behave like that.
I mean, it reminds me, if I think of being at home, the common adage that we heard growing up was children learn what they live. But we do have this added complexity, Linda, of access to social media. A lot of children who are effectively raised by social media, influenced by social media, and by consequence influenced by their friends and their peer networks. You can maybe put in place some of these protections and these fail-safes in place in the home. But what happens, when they're outside of the protection or the protective circle of their parents and their communities?
So it needs us as South Africans to become the villages in which the children are raised. Children are going to taverns to drink. There's an adult that's allowing them to access those places without ensuring compliance to the law, which should really be, I want to see your ID before you get into here. And whether they're drinking at taverns or buying alcohol at clubs, there is a responsibility of people with liquor licenses to ensure that they are giving access to their premises, to their product, to people over the age of 18. And until we get that right, we will consistently be having conversations around alcohol abuse going wayward among young people.
You're calling for the closure of taverns in close proximity to schools. And again, one wonders, how are they granted a liquor license in the first place? One would make the assumption then, in terms of zoning, that if they are situated near a school or places of worship and where children are, that they might not be operating legally.
There is that. They might not be operating illegally. Two, there is a community that's aware that there's probably a tavern that's not operating legally. There are law enforcement agents that should be patrolling and being made aware of those operations. And it seems like all those systems have collapsed. And that's why willy-nilly we can see children being able to access taverns, being able to abscond from school and spend the day at taverns, drinking with adults, and nobody sees an issue with that. And that's really where the problem is, the complicity of adults in the social issues that we're facing with young people.
Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo, thank you very much for stopping by to share that message with us. And as you heard there in that interview, it's going to take a lot more than enforcement or changing the regulations to deal with the scourge of underage drinking in our country.